Welcome to Ogles channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. And today we're on the 100th episode of this series, and so for every 100 games that I cover, I want to cover a Game Boy game called the Ogles Holy Grail, which means it means something special to me personally or to my past, or have a very special memory attached to that particular game. And there will be 10 Ogles Holy Grails that we go through because there's 951 games in the challenge, and so for every 100, and then the final game, which I already actually have in my mind what the final game is going to be, but it's going to be many years before we actually get to that particular one. But the game that we're covering today is going to be Snow Brothers or Snow Brothers Jr. for the original Game Boy. Now, I never played this game growing up. I played the original Snow Brothers on the NES, and I played that game a lot as a kid. My father, my brother, we played it pretty much endlessly. We'd rent it from a place called Mega Video in the nearest town, and eventually when Mega Video went out of business, we purchased the game Snow Brothers from them, and we continued to play it for many years past that. Well, several years later, when I got married to my wife one Christmas, she actually gave me Snow Brothers for the Game Boy, which I didn't even know existed, and it replicates the experience very well from the NES. Obviously, I have to downgrade a few things, but they also upgrade a few things for the small cartridge here. Now, the game itself is just called Snow Brothers, but when you load the game up, it's going to be called Snow Brothers Jr., so there is some conflict as far as like what the title of the game is. But today we're going to dive through and go through the entire game of Snow Brothers or Snow Brothers Jr. for the Game Boy. Now, I always like to start the videos off looking at the box art for the game first, and the box art for Snow Brothers on the Game Boy is pretty much identical to Snow Brothers on the NES. I don't think they changed a single thing like at all between the two covers. They might have cut off like the top and the bottom to make it more of a square instead of rectangle, but outside of that, like the cover is completely identical. And it's such a great cover too, because it shows like Nick and Tom like right there in the center, throwing out their little snowballs at the variety of enemies you're going to encounter, and just so cartoonish looking and so charming. And like I just love the cover in like every single way, and it's like totally different like than the Japanese Snow Brothers, because they have like I don't know, a little bit less of cartoonish expression, and I don't know, I just really enjoy like the American European style of the Snow Brothers, and the cover is just it's just iconic. Now when you start the game up here, we have the title screen. It says Snow Brothers Jr. for the very first time, and so it wasn't included on the box art or the game cartridge, but the game is officially called Snow Brothers Jr. And they don't actually give like any backstory after the title screen. There's no actual title screen music. It's a little lacking compared to like the NES game, but the game does try to give some story throughout the game instead of like overloading you at the beginning. And the game storyline is very convoluted, and I really don't have like a direct answer of what the storyline is. I looked at the Japanese manual, I looked at the English manual, at least what parts of the English manual I could find, and I pieced the story together best that I could. So what we have here is a giant unknown world, and I'm going to call it Capcom World because that's the publisher of the game here. And inside Capcom World, there's a sun god who resides over the entire world. Well, the sun god creates two individual kingdoms, the kingdom of fire and the kingdom of snow. Now, the kingdom of fire is called Hatada and is ruled over by King Scorch and all of his minions. And the kingdom of snow is ruled over by the princesses and the snow people. And so these two kingdoms pretty much sort of exist in peace as long as the sun god is sort of helping them out here. Well, in the first game, King Scorch does try to disrupt the flow of events or disrupt the peace a little bit. He kidnaps the princesses from the snow kingdoms, and then Nick and Tom have to go out and defeat King Scorch and rescue the princesses and bring them back to the kingdom. And so that was the story of the first game. Now in this game, Snow Brothers Jr., you're playing as the next generation. So instead of Nick and Tom, you're playing as Nick Jr. and Tom Jr., and instead of King Scorch, you have King Scorch Jr. Now King Scorch Jr. is how he wants to take over the entire world. And so what he does, he steals the heart from the sun god, and then he travels to the snowland and he kidnaps one of the co-rulers, who's going to be Nick Jr. And so he's trying to basically take over the world by taking out the other kingdom and taking out the god of the land, basically instilling himself as the ultimate ruler. And so we play as Tom Jr. in this game, and our goal is to not only rescue our brother, but also rescue the heart of the sun and restore it back to the sun itself, or the sun god, and restore peace across the land. Now, like I said, I'm basing this off of the Japanese manual, the English manual, and what is discussed somewhat in the game as far as like cutscenes. And so it could be wrong, but I think this is the most cohesive story I can make out of what is given to us here. Now the game is going to play pretty much exactly the same as the NES game. You're going to play as Tom Jr. here, and when you start off, there are 50 floors that you're going to go through, and roughly every 10 floors, you fight off a boss, and after you fight the ultimate boss at the end, you journey into what I'm going to call like the bonus levels of sorts to finish the story out. Now while you're playing as Tom Jr. here, you only have to finish off one single stage at a time, so you don't scroll left or right or up or down. It's just simply one single image behind you, and your goal is to kill off every single enemy on that particular stage. And you can do that a few different ways. You can press B button to turn them into a snowball, and you can just simply toss that snowball into a wall or toss it away, and that enemy is killed off. And you can repeat that on every single enemy that you encounter, and you can finish off the stage. However, you're not going to get like any power-ups or any bonus points or anything special if you just simply do it that way. Your better bet is to turn one single enemy or just a couple enemies into snowballs, and when you toss those enemies, they end up hitting the other enemies who are not snowballs, and they go flying off in the air, and when they land, they turn into like candy or cake, or if you're super lucky, they turn into a potion that gives you an extra power-up to make Tom Jr. just a little bit more powerful. So you can get like a potion to make yourself run faster, a potion to make your snowballs shoot further away, a potion to make your snowballs shoot bigger, or so you turn enemies into snowballs faster, and there's even one power that makes you like a giant snowball head, and you can just sort of run around the screen, killing all the enemies off as you go. And so you always want to go into a level and sort of plan out what's the best path of action here in order to turn one or two enemies into a snowball and just kill everybody else off in the process to get all those extra power-ups. So there is a little bit of a strategy involved in the game instead of just simply clear the stage in order to move on to the next one. Now, as far as enemies go, they're going to follow very similar to the NES one. In the first stages here, we have like these little lizard-looking creatures. You have like these little demon monsters off to the side as well. And so you're not going to get too much variety in the first 10 stages. But as you get to the end of those first 10 stages, you go up against a boss. Now, the boss, I had to look it up and see what it's called. The boss is called Mogera. I'm sure it's a Japanese name and it means something in Japanese, and I'm not sure if it's even translated for English at the same time. But Mogera is this giant jumping lizard here, got spikes all over him, very demonic looking really, and he can shoot out his children in order to attack you and try to kill you off. Now, your goal here is to turn the children into snowballs and then toss them back out at Mogera here, and once you've hit him enough times, he's going to pass away. Now, the sprite of this boss is a good bit different from the NES version. They sort of took his head and just made it ginormous for the Game Boy. I assume as to get more details on the individual creature. I'm not really sure for that, but it's very different, but at the same time, it's more cartoonish, and I can't say I like either version better. They're just, different in their own right. Now, when you take him out, you get your first little key piece here, and once you collect all the key pieces, you can open up the, pathway to the sun god, but also every time you pick up a key, you get a little bit of the story that's going to be revealed. And the story for this part, it says the world was at peace with the sun watching over the two kingdoms. So sort of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Now, after you defeat a boss, you do get a bonus level, and the bonus level is different from the NES version. We played like a slot machine. For this one, you actually get to play like a Plinko game for like Price is Right, and you shoot a snowball, and it comes down and gives you a power-up or like an extra life or a letter which leads to extra lives. And so, a little bit different of a bonus game. I can't say I like it better or worse, but, it's a fun little game there. Now, our next set of 10 levels, we're going to introduce a new enemy, and this new enemy is going to be one that I absolutely hated in the NES version, and I'm going to call it the Tornado Man, because he basically is a normal enemy, just sort of runs back and forth. He can throw out little daggers at you, or at least he did in the NES. I didn't see any daggers in this particular version. He may or may not throw daggers out in the Game Boy, but his main move is he turns into a tornado and he can sort of traverse all across the screen. He's not bound by any of the platforms or anything like that, and he's also invincible when he's coming across the screen as a tornado, and you sort of have to run away until he turns back into a human again, and you can snow him up and toss him away. And a huge nuisance of a character in the NES. I didn't have as much of a problem in the Game Boy, I guess probably because I've played this game so many times. I sort of know his little tricks here and there, but they do introduce the tornado fella in these next 10 levels. Now, the second level boss here is going to be the same as the NES boss. It's like a giant frog blob. I looked his name up. It's called Gamakichi. Once again, that's obviously a Japanese name. I don't know what it would translate to be in English here. And they definitely compromised the sprite for Gamakichi for the Game Boy. On the NES, he was this giant bomb frog at the bottom, and he'd shoot out bombs out at you, and you snow the bombs up and toss them back out at him. But here he's got the same moveset, but he's so much smaller and looks way less fierce, and I don't know, I don't really particularly enjoy this boss as much, just because they compromised it so much from the Game Boy or from the NES without giving its own individual personality. But once you finish him off, it does give you another key, which leads to another part of the story, and it shows the two kingdoms at war, which is when King Scorch Jr. is going to attack the Snow Kingdom here. And then we get our next 10 levels, and the next 10 levels are like the Ice World, and there's not really like a whole lot of variety as far as like enemies between the first 20 levels and these next 10. You are going to get the lizards can now shoot flames downward at you, and that's going to make a small difference. And also there's some platforms you can't jump onto unless you make an enemy a snowball, hop onto that snowball, and hop onto the next platform. And so that is also going to be an addition here. Now the boss is going to be one of the giant birds from the NES game. Now in the NES game there were two giant birds that came and attacked you. There was a Tochan and Kochan or Kachan. Once again, I don't know, but you only get one bird for the Game Boy version. That's just simply because of what the Game Boy could probably handle here. And the bird sort of hatches out his little eggs down here, and then the eggs hatch out themselves. Or I guess he lays the eggs down here, and then the eggs hatch out. And then the little baby birds try to come and attack you, and they are adorable little baby birds here. I mean, just look at the sprites there as the birds are journeying across. You turn them into snowballs, and you toss them back at the giant bird. And after enough hits, the giant bird loses all of its feathers and tries to fly away. And that's an animation from the NES version, and I am so glad they kept it for the Game Boy, because for some reason as a kid, like I just really got a kick out of like seeing the bird lose all of its feathers and sort of try to fly away as a naked bird basically. And so I don't know, I enjoyed this level quite a bit, and I enjoy that boss a lot as well. Now when you defeat him, you are going to get another key, which is going to unlock another part of the story. And for this part, it just simply says some people remember what the ancient legend says, so it's very vague. It's obviously leading into the next clue. I would have rather it just simply given its own individual clue with some better animations, but you know, they're trying to create the mystery here, I guess. And the next 10 stages are going to be the jungle stages, and the jungle stages once again are going to keep mostly the same enemies, but they did leave out the Jester, Jester enemy from the NES version. I always thought he was so mischievous and like conniving looking, and I was actually looking forward to him, and they just simply took him out, which is okay, I get it, but you know, I was looking forward to him. And then you get to the boss of this particular level, and his name is Big Noos, and he basically can shoot out fire, and the fire is obviously trying to damage you, but also anytime you turn one of the little smaller monsters or smaller demons into a snowball, it will melt them back out, and they can come to try to attack you again. And you basically just have to snow up enough of the small monsters, hit the balls back at him to avoid the fire at the same time, and you'll take him out. He's not too hard. He's actually a little bit different of an environment and different attack abilities from the NES. So, I don't know, some variation in the boss fight for this fella. And then you are going to get another piece of the key, and it says a hero will appear to unite the world again, which is obviously going to be Tom Jr. Now the next 10 levels are my favorite levels in the entire game. They were the same way for the NES. It's almost like a hell level to a degree, because all the monsters have like little horns on them. They look a little bit more evil, a little bit more demonic here. You also have like little bats flying around, sort of like for Halloween and whatnot. It's very much of a spooky level that you're going through, but also the physics are all messed up here as well, because you can like fall down into the holes, and when you fall into the holes at the bottom of the screen, you come out at the top of the screen, and so the level just sort of repeats itself over and over until you take all the enemies out. And also like the snowballs as you're going through here, when they fall into the holes, they come out the top as well. I don't know, I just really always enjoyed these 10 levels immensely. They are more difficult, but they're just so much more fun to play through. And when you get to the boss here, it's going to be what's called the rock bubbles, and these two giant statues off to the side, and they basically just shoot out all these rock bubbles at you. And there's three types of bubbles that they're going to shoot. They can shoot one bubble out that's just simply empty. It can trap you in it. And when you're trapped in it, you have to keep throwing out snowballs in order to escape from it. They can shoot out a bubble that has a flame in it, and the flame will just simply drop down once it hits the spikes, and you just have to simply avoid it. And then the third type of bubble is going to house an enemy inside it, and you turn the enemy into a snowball, and you toss it off at one of the individual statues off to the side. And once you've done that enough times on each statue, you've taken the level out, or you've defeated the final boss in the, I guess what I call the base game here is the final boss in the NES game. And once you've done that, you now can rescue your brother, Nick Jr. But you don't just rescue Nick Jr., you also get the heart that belongs back to the Sun God. So you have technically defeated King Scorch Jr., even though you don't ever actually see King Scorch Jr., but that's the same way in the NES version, you never actually saw King Scorch. And so I just assume that the two giant rock bubble statues are the overall entity of King Scorch, or the entity of King Scorch Jr. And so now you officially have rescued your brother, and you have the heart that you need to return to the Sun God. which leads us into the 10 bonus levels that's only on the Game Boy. These are not part of the NES game. And so for these levels, you have these little sort of, I guess, flame creatures, and they shoot out like little flames out at you. And so these levels can get pretty darn hard here, but it's a very much of a new mechanic for Snow Brothers, and I actually enjoy that quite a bit. Now there is a glitch that can happen in this level that skips you from like level 2 to level 8, and so you can finish this up pretty darn fast. I don't know what causes the glitch, but it's worth, going through the levels. So if you get the glitch, go back and play the game again so you can actually experience all 10 of these levels, because they are a heck of a lot of fun. And when you get to the final boss here, you're going to fight against the sun, and the sun's going to shoot out like little smaller suns or stars probably out at you, and you turn those into snowballs and fire them back at it. And once you've hit the sun enough times, the sun sort of turns into like a decayed state sort of, or is extinguished, and at that point you are able to take the sun god's heart or the sun god's smile, give it back to the sun, and the sun god is reunited or rejuvenated and is basically bringing peace back to the world again. So you've defeated King Scorch, you've got the Fire Kingdom back in business, or back under peace, you have Snowland back in peace, the sun god is ruling over everything in peace again, and all the little enemies and all the little snow people are rejoicing down at the bottom. A very peaceful little ending. However, like I said, that is not a clear storyline. That is the best of my ability on creating a story for the game. Now there are no credits that are going to roll, but you do get like a little congratulations message, so there is somewhat of a ending here. But let's talk about the game as an overall. Now I adore Snow Brothers on the NES, and truth be told, I adore it on the Game Boy as well, because the gameplay is pretty much identical to the NES with just a few extra levels added in there. There are some things that take it back a little bit, like I really do miss a 2-player action, and I know you'd have to have like a link cable for that, but I have so many memories of playing Snow Brothers as multiplayer, so to play it as single player is it does hinder the fun just a little bit, at least for me, but it's still a great game regardless, and still definitely worth going through. Some of the enemies, they are downgraded a little bit. Like I said, I missed a Jester. The enemy of level 2 is taken back a little bit. You only get 1 bird instead of 2 birds. And so there are limitations to the hardware. And I mean, I get that. It's just sort of the Game Boy versus the NES. You can't expect the exact same game. But the overall feel for it is still completely there. The overall fun is still there. All the power-ups are still there. And you get 10 bonus levels on the Game Boy. So there's a lot of pluses for the Game Boy and an argument to play through the Game Boy version of the game. I know I'm going to be a little bit biased on this game, but I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And I know you're like, well, how can you give an Ogles Holy Grail game 8 out of 10? That doesn't mean I think the game is perfect. It just simply means that I have a special attachment, a special memory to it, and this game will always hold a special place in my heart, even though I can acknowledge it's not a perfect game. But some of the other games that were going to be the Ogles Holy Grails, they will be true 10 out of 10. So be on the lookout for those. Like I said, there are 10 of them. This is just simply the first of 10. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.